Hey friends, this is Michael Boehm with Youth Apologetics Training. Today we're going to continue with this series about the Trinity. Is it a pagan doctrine? Did Christianity copy pagan religions, different world religions, and their gods in their triune type forms? Or is this strictly a Christian concept? Where did it come from? And as we progress through this series, you're going to realize that there are many different God myth stories from around the world that have elements of a type of triune God. But as we look at these closer, you're going to find that none of them have the Christian concept of one God in three persons. Secondly, you're going to find that they're not ontologically equal, as in they're not the same in office and in power and omniscience and preeminence and all these things, all these different characteristics of our God. They're not equal like the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit are. Many of these quotes that we're going to look at, many of these different gods, some of it is cooked, okay? As in the people that made these assertions that are claiming that Christianity copied these faiths, they kind of cooked the data, okay? They use Christian terminology so that it sounds more like a copy, all right? And we discussed that a little bit in that series about is Jesus a copy, a Christian copy of ancient pagan mystery religions, all right? That's one of the first series I recorded way back in the day, about a year and a half ago. And they're going to use Christianese. They're going to stretch the truth. They're going to kind of hop and skip around certain things and omit certain facts in order to make the story fit. All right? But as we look at these, you're going to find, no, it doesn't fit. But first and foremost, I want to make this point. They're committing the genetic fallacy, okay? They're making an appeal to a fallacy here. As in, these other writings, these other myths, these other faiths had a concept of a triune God. Now, certainly when you look at these different writings and claims that Christianity copied these ancient gods, there is an assumption that is made that everything is a myth. And that there's just all these different people out there throughout history that are coming up with their own little God myth stories, okay? And so the Jews and the Christians were no different. They were just kind of making it up as they go. They get together and somebody of preeminence comes up with a part of the story, and then years later somebody else comes up with another part of the story, and really all that's happening is they're just copying one from another. And so they assume that these other myths come before Christianity because the one true faith as portrayed in the Bible. Let's stick with that. They assume that all these other faiths, these myths, came about before the truth that we find in the Bible, and therefore what we find in the Bible is a copy of these others. Well, from a Christian perspective, I can say this much. According to the Bible, God created the heavens and the earth in the beginning, okay? And somewhere in those 6 literal 24-hour days, give or take a few minutes, because the rotation of the earth might have slowed down or sped up a little bit, but in those 6 days of creation, somewhere in there was the creation of a fellow named Lucifer. And sometime shortly thereafter, he rebelled against his Creator. His pride blinded him, and he rebelled against his Creator. Now, ever since Satan rebelled against his Creator, he's been active on this planet, coming up with false faiths, different religions, different movements against God. Really, Satan doesn't care what you believe as long as you reject God, right? Well, you would think that Satan, Lucifer, would have a concept of what God is. Now, if God really is Father, Son, Holy Spirit, one God manifesting in 3 distinct persons, if that absolutely is true, and it absolutely is, then you would think that Satan might just embed some of those concepts in some of these false faiths that are around the world. And you do see some of that happening. Whatever the case, all that to say, when somebody claims that Christianity copied these pagan religions, that is the genetic fallacy. Doesn't mean it's automatically false, although it is, but it's one gigantic red flag. You really can't make a case on something like that. You need a little bit more facts. But whatever the case, let's go ahead and look at some of these supposed trinities that people claim. Obviously, we're not going to be able to get to all of them, but let's look at some of these closer. And by the way, just as an aside, I just want to mention, friends, there are millions and millions of pagan concepts of different gods out there, okay, from old. In other words, statistically, you have a large pool to draw from. Just in India alone, Hinduism, they've got millions of gods. And if you rummage through some of these millions of gods, you're going to find something there to latch a hold of and say, hey, look, see, this God is a trinity. Not to mention all the twinities, as in two gods in one type concepts out there, and quadinities and so on and so forth. There are so many different groupings of gods, and it's funny how this happens. When we look at these, you're going to see that it's really just, there's three gods, and they know each other, and one of them is the god of the skies, and one of them is the god of the land, and one of them is the god of the underworld. Hey, look, it's a trinity. No, that's not a trinity. That's three gods. They all live in different areas, and they happen to talk every once in a while. They throw a party and hang out. It happened to me last Tuesday. You just kind of hang out with these other gods, and you're like, hey guys, what's up? But you know what I'm saying? Okay, sorry. So here's one of them. How about the mother, the maiden, and the crone, the triple goddess? We talked about this in my series about Wicca. Yeah, I did a series on Wicca long ago and far away. I actually have a history in Wicca, and so does my wife. We were both practicing that independently long ago and far away when I was far younger, and my wife when I first met her. That's a long story. Check out my series on Wicca. I get into that a little bit. But the mother, the maiden, and the crone. Some people claim that is a trinity, and that Christianity copied this mother, maiden, and crone. Well, is that the case? No, because the mother, the maiden, and the crone, and I talk about that in that series of Wicca, is three modes of the same person. So if anything, this fits more of the oneness Pentecostal modalism type model more than anything. We have the maiden, the young lady that's good looking. And then we have the mother. She's now pregnant, or she has a child, or whatever. She's the mother. And then we have the crone, that old cranky witch lady. Okay, there are three different modes of the same person. It's not three persons in one God. It is one deity manifested in three different modes of that deity's life, I guess, if you will. Okay, so it doesn't work. It doesn't work. How about the Egyptian gods? This one is brought up more than anything, in my opinion. Everywhere that I look, I always seem to see the Egyptian gods being brought up. And so here we have Isis, Osiris, and Horus. Okay, and we already talked about this yesterday. It's very similar to the Nimrod, Semiramis story. In fact, there are so many offshoots of that same story where you have one guy, he dies, and then the wife, she becomes pregnant. And for purposes of trying to keep the kingdom, okay, we have a king, he dies, or a ruler, he dies, and the wife wants to hold on to the kingdom, so she gets impregnated, and she comes up with the story that the child is actually a reincarnated version of the father, okay? So, again, we're not really looking at a different person here. We're actually looking at that same God. And then this woman starts claiming to be deity herself, okay? So we have this Isis, like Semiramis, Osiris, who is like Nimrod, and then Horus, the son, who's similar to Tammuz. By the way, most of these Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz type stories have this son being born on December 25th. Yikes. You know, there are some elements that the Catholic Church introduced into, okay, I'm going to use air quotes here because you can't see me, Christianity. Catholicism is not Christianity. It is basically an offshoot of Christianity. Some claim it's a cult. I tend to lean in that direction, but whatever the case, the definition of cult's a little bit elusive, all right? But whatever the case, they hold to many unbiblical doctrines, one of which is a denial of justification by faith alone, all right? And so they're not Christian. Nonetheless, through the world's eyes, they see Catholicism as Christian, and they see all the Bible-believing, fundamental, born-again, Christ-following Christians as basically an offshoot of the Catholic Church. Okay, so there's going to be some problems there. Nonetheless, the Catholic Church has introduced some pagan concepts to the faith. The Trinity is not one of them, though. The early church, before the Catholic Church had even manifested itself, recognized the Trinity. Why? Because it's in the Scriptures, guys. It's clearly in the Bible. And if it's in the Bible, it's truth, right? So, anyway, you have these Egyptian gods. Now, look, Osiris, Horus, Isis, they're just three of the pantheon of gods that the Egyptians worshipped, okay? And there were many gods in this pantheon who were higher, okay, more powerful than your Isis, Osiris, and Horus. So it doesn't fit the model of the Trinity. The Trinity, we see that it is one God, not many gods, one God manifesting in three persons, and they are equal. Okay, ontologically equal. Not the case with the Egyptian gods. What about Hinduism? Now, we already talked about this earlier. Hinduism has millions of gods. And I mean, everywhere you look on the internet for how many gods Hinduism contains, there are so many of them. And you find that everywhere you look, there's different numbers. So we'll just stick with millions. I've seen all the way from 1 million to 33 million. All right, there's a lot. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. There's a lot. And so statistically, there's a large pool to pull from here. There's a lot of different places you can look. But having said that, we have this concept of the Trimurti. And I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that right because I don't think I've ever actually heard somebody say it. But this Trimurti, it is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Again, it's not like the Trinity. We have three gods here, not one God in three persons. Secondly, we come to find out that this Trimurti concept didn't come about until about somewhere between the 4th and 7th centuries AD. That's a problem because Christianity was around and was recognizing the concept of the Trinity long before that. So if anybody wants to commit the genetic fallacy, it should be us. Because Christianity had this concept a long time before the Trimurti. By the way, guys, Hinduism is notorious for copying other faiths or trying to assimilate them. Here pretty soon I'm going to record a series on Buddhism. And it's interesting and a little bit humorous. Buddhism, when it first made itself known, when it was starting to become more popular, at one point it started overtaking Hinduism in its evangelistic powers, if you will. It was growing faster than Hinduism. And Hinduism had to make a choice. No, we either fight them or we assimilate them. So what do? They say that the Buddha, is just another one of their gods, part of Hinduism. In fact, I believe, if I remember right, they say that Buddha was another incarnation of Vishnu. All right, and so that was their attempt to try and assimilate Buddhism into Hinduism, which it worked to a very small extent. Whatever the case, Hinduism is so eclectic, it's so large that they have so many gods. What's another couple more gods? When you see another faith come along and it's giving you some opposition, some competition, if you will, well, if you can't beat them, join them, or let them join you. So anyway, that's the Trimurti, okay? Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. But the concept didn't come about till somewhere between the 4th and the 7th centuries. In other words, we don't have any problems there. Christianity was recognizing the Trinity long before that. I suppose this is a good place to stop, friends. If you like what I'm doing with this podcast and you'd like to help support me, I would absolutely appreciate it. You guys can send donations to P.O. Box 2392, Loveland, Colorado. That's Loveland, all one word. Colorado 80539. Thank you guys so much for your help. That helps me keep this going. There are some costs involved. Not too many, but definitely enough. And so with that, I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.